Please welcome Esteban Valdez.
Hi. Is this forward or backwards? Nope, there we go. So I run an animation studio called Echo Bridge. And we've been in St. Pete for the last 8 years. And if you guys don't know us, let's see what's the next slide going to be. Yeah, so it's hello. So we're all friends here. So you can call me Esteban if you want. You can call me Steve. You can come talk to me afterwards. I don't bite. And I don't have an avatar of me right now, so I'm definitely just going to have to talk to you in person. Usually I like to be behind the screen and not the person in front of it. But lately, we've been experimenting something at the studio, which is we've been vlogging. And we've been vlogging our experience in animation, but also highlighting the creatives in St. Pete. So we're really doing our best to kind of give this area a really big spotlight. So I hope you guys, have some fun. Come talk to us afterwards. If you want to be a part of the vlog and just kind of plug yourself in, more than happy to do that. But the more we can help each other to push this area, I think the better things will be for all of us. So yeah, funny enough, I got into animation and I started the studio, not because I loved it, but because I hate animation. And there's a few reasons. So the first one is that it's really, really, sorry, I try to control my language too. All right, fuck it. But it's a lot of fucking work. A lot of fucking work. We do everything 24 frames per second. It's a hand-drawn animation studio. So I can count them up, at least 1 out of 8 studios left in the United States that still does this. And we're a very small shop. But I started the studio out of just pure anger for the industry itself, because at this moment in my life, I've been working in animation for about 18 years. I've worked on a lot of television shows for Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. I've done commercials for MTV. I've done music videos for a whole bunch of other people. I've been in studios mid-size where I was, one of 50 to large corporations where I was one of thousands. And the one thing that I do remember the most is how just weak, spineless, mediocre most of the content that was being done. It's put out there, and it's put out there not just for us, but for the kids that watch it, for anybody who loves animation. If you really take a moment to think about what animation is, how many of you, just by a show of hands, thought Disney when you hear animation? Okay. So that's usually the go-to. You think animation, you think Disney, you think Mickey Mouse and Orlando, but nobody really takes the time to stop and ask, what does animation mean? What does it actually look like? What is it all about? And personally, I've learned a lot of my life philosophy through animation. Animation is about the illusion of life. We create motion. Essentially, it's motion pictures. It's a trick. It's a game that we play on ourselves, where we make one image walk and talk. But not only that, when you're really good, when you're really at the top of your game, you can make them think. So it's not just a character, jokingly, hubbling around, but it's a character who walks, who thinks, and has a conscience of its own. And in a way, you get to kind of play God, because you really have total control over this individual that's on the page. And if they don't do things that you like, then you completely obliterate them. So, but part of the drive for me is that I really do love this medium, the art form itself. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's also probably the highest echelon for artistic expression that we've ever achieved as human beings. And part of the reason I think that and believe that so dearly is because you take every aspect of life, politically, philosophically, religiously, scientifically, mathematically, everything down to poetry and music, and you combine them all into this one little format. It could be 10 seconds, it could be 10 hours. It could be one season, it could be one feature film. but you take everything that you've experienced and everything that you know, and you put it into this one format, and you release it out into the world, and that is your voice, that is your statement. And so when I look at the industry currently, the question I ask myself is, what the hell are we saying? What are we doing with this medium? This medium that, for all intents and purposes of this conversation, we pioneered for the most part. We engineered this. And for anybody who's a native Floridian, there's also some deep-rooted history in animation here as well. Not too long ago, about the mid-1940s, the Fleischer brothers opened their studio in Miami, Florida. And if you're not familiar with the Fleischers, they're actually one of the earlier engineers of animation technology. So shows like Popeye, Betty Boop, Bosco the Clown, Felix the Cat, Gulliver's Travels, a lot of that stuff happened here in Florida. And it's amazing that nobody talks about it. In the late 80s and 90s, Orlando had a boom in the animation world as well, where you had Nickelodeon opening up their studios, Disney opened up the studios, MGM. So there's a rich culture of animation, film production, just seeping. It's not just the humidity that's in Florida. So I hate the industry for what it is, and the more I talk with my colleagues who work at some of these very big, prestigious studios, and the more the horror stories I hear, I don't know, it drove me to do something different, which is where I started this company. I started this not because I love animation, what everybody's doing, in, business-wise. I did it because it's just my statement of saying fuck you to the industry. So some of the work that we do, and that's been all done in St. Pete. So there's a studio just up the street from here. I've got an animator and coordinator who's with me as well. Where's the other one? There he is. We're a quiet bunch. We really keep to ourselves. And I'll be completely candid. I've lived in St. Pete for the last 8 years. I don't know anything about St. Pete because I spend most of my life behind a desk. Anywhere between 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, all year. And so that stuff, there's commercials that we worked on which are nothing more than about 30 seconds, and they took us about 8 weeks to produce, all by hand, just sitting there, just line after line after line. But yeah, so these are some of the places that we worked for, all the pedigree stuff. These are the places that our work has been featured in. So Billboard, Rolling Stone, Variety, IndieWire, Bleeding, blah, blah, blah. So this is a short film that we just finished animation production on. We're going into post-production and moving forward into the film festival circuit. And part of the reason, again, why I started this studio wasn't just to do the service work. It was to create and have a dialogue with individuals. Because I believe that art, for the most part, is communication. We talk to each other this way. How many of you guys are visual in your industry? Raise them up real high. There you go. So you know that your visual representation speaks so much for you. So you want to be well-spoken. So you have to be dedicated to your craft. And that's something that is completely lost in our industry today, is the concept of craft and dedication. And throwing in a little bit of philosophy, throwing in a little bit of questioning, having the dialogue for everybody to exchange. And not just verbal talking heads on the screen, but really something that's going to make you stop and think. And if there's something that, through watching, you can have a sort of epiphany or a moment of just like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I didn't think about that. Or I'm feeling a certain way. If I can provoke you into any kind of thought at all, negative or positive, I don't care. I really don't give a fuck if you feel happy or sad about it. So long as you feel something, then I did something right. And if you feel nothing at all, then I failed. And I've made it a mission in my studio that if I ever put out anything of that caliber, I will shut the studio down in a heartbeat. I'm intense. But just a little bit about this project, this is a concept about exploration into space. And what does it really mean to go out and search for a new home when our own is really just fine and we need to take care of it? It's something that we don't really give too much thought of because we have this pie-in-the-sky idea that somewhere out there is something better, but we never look within. So it's something to ask a question, where are we going, is it worth it, etc. When it comes out, I think you guys will like it. I've been told that it's very panic-inducing. So this story is called Ambition. It's a feature film that we're working on. Where's the wood? But it's a feature film that we're working on, and unlike your traditional animation, which is talking dogs and singing hot dogs and whatever the fuck it is, this one is really about the experiences of being an entrepreneur in this day and age. The entrepreneurial culture that has kind of arisen out of the last 20 years, the last 10 years, where we're at now, and it's a reflective piece that asks us the question, like, is this what we really want? Is all of this what we're looking for? So it's a deep question. It's one that's very serious. Are we doing things the way we should? Is what everybody else telling us what we really need to be doing? Or are we doing what somebody else is telling us, and we're not listening to ourselves? And this short is about trying to hold on to hope, especially when things are very dark. It's a lot of the work that I do personally, it's just that, it's personal. And I don't want to look at a market and say, okay, I'm going to make work for the analytical numbers that I get from Facebook and Twitter and all the other social media shit. Because at the end of the day, now you're just looking at numbers, and you're making something that doesn't speak to the human being. You're speaking stuff that talks to binary numbers. What the fuck is that all about? Why are we doing this? And that's the biggest question that I have, is why the fuck are we doing this? Why does this industry exist if all we're going to do is just make mediocre, boring-ass, lame, weak shit? I don't like this industry. But I love it at the same time. So aside from the heavier stuff, I also think about the kids growing up. And I have a daughter. She's going to be 13 this year. She lives with her mom. But I always have her in the forefront of my mind when I'm making this stuff. It's like, what is she going to grow up with? And when I go out to these industry conferences to pitch, they're like, oh yeah, we're looking for STEM, we're looking for creative, we're looking for somebody with a strong female lead. And here you go. And they look at it, it's like, oh, but it's not marketable enough. It's not meeting the sales. Like, yeah, but you want somebody who's in STEM, right? You want somebody who's going to have a strong female lead. You want somebody who's... And what I've learned is that most of these executives, I don't give a shit if they're watching this too, but you guys are spineless. So for the most part, when people don't really stop and think about what it is that they're trying to put out there, everybody's just after the dollars. And okay, you want to make money? Fine. Money comes, money goes. But this is the stuff that we make, and it shouldn't be forgettable. You work all your life. You work all this time to do what? Earn a check? And then at the end of it, it just goes away? And then what are you left with when you look behind? I worked in television for 10 years, and at the end of 10 years, I look back, the last show I directed, it was 2 years of my life that I spent grueling over. I think there were 2 weeks where I didn't go home. I slept at the studio, I showered at the studio, I ate at the studio, and I took a look and I'm like, well, what the hell did I work for? What is this all about? Why am I here? What am I sacrificing myself for? Is this going to do anybody any good? Or is this just about getting some jokes out of the way because, the frat boys thought it was funny? So this is another show. It's based off of a niece of mine, and it's about her developing her own internal confidence and her own ability to be happy with herself. And this is stuff that I think that, just a little bit of thought. It's not that hard. Just a little bit of an idea, a little bit of getting out of that comfort shell of like, oh, well, we're not going to make the shareholders happy. We have too much of that. The market's saturated with this shit. And it's not just in animation too. It's in graphic design. It's in industrial design as well. I mean, how many god-awful buildings that come up? It's just glass and steel. I mean, this place has some history, some culture. The last thing you want it to do is turn it into Los Angeles. Sorry, LA. But, this is a great place. And you have the talent and the ability to make it better. You have the ability and the skill set and the know-how and the experience, and if you have the will and the passion and the drive, you can make what you do very meaningful. The last thing I want to show you about the projects that we're creating, I'm working with David Rosenberg. He was a co-writer on Rugrats. So it's a really fun project working with him. I'm also working with a guy named Steve Friedman. And Steven and I, we've been working together for the last 3 years. We brought him over from London to come and do a travel show, and he based an episode about St. Pete. And that was the first time that it got a really big push. And St. Pete was featured on National Geographic. And it was really, really big for us because at that point, the only thing anybody ever knew about St. Pete outside of here was our studio. But then people look at it, it's like, well, you know what, Florida's actually really cool. And now we have other individuals coming over to visit and see and taking a look, and we're trying to attract more opportunities to come here in order to better this area. I'm on a mission. So this is our studio. We are over at the studio at 620. We're right upstairs. And we've been there since 2013. That's actually the third studio location that we've had. And these are some of the people that I've worked with over the years. But that's where I started in 2008. The name of the studio is called Echo Bridge because that's the street that my parents lived off. And because in my line of work, I'm pre-internet, pre-social media. So the idea of working remote it wasn't an option. You had to go where the job was. So I found myself for a decade living out of a suitcase, moving from state to state, city to city, country to country, just chasing the next opportunity. And when I started Echo Bridge in Massachusetts, originally in 2008, that's all I had. There's a longer story behind this, but I'll give you the short version. And if you want to hear more about it, more than happy to have a brew with you or two. But I had been going through a difficult time when I was up in Canada directing the show. My visa had run out, and I was coming back to the States, and I started looking for opportunities again. And I started talking with the big boys, seeing about directing, seeing about storyboarding, seeing about producing, what's going to happen. This is in 2008, so I had saved up some money and decided, all right, well, visa's up, time to go back. And by the time I was crossing the border, the economic situation happened, the crisis. Everything crashed. I lost a lot of money, and I was virtually broke. And I had nothing else to go on except my Cintiq and a laptop. Nobody was hiring. Nobody was giving me a chance. Even with the director credit under my belt, I couldn't crack any eggs on this one. So I said, fuck it, I'm going to do something myself. And I made a short film. I only had $200 to my name, but that was enough to get things going. And that short film eventually led back to here. I couldn't find something, and I was waiting for somebody to give me something. And then I realized that was the problem the entire time, is I was waiting for something to happen. And I think many of us kind of have that moment from time to time. It's like, well, geez, I wish if this thing was better. I wish other people would make this world a safer place. I wish, this bakery would make something tastier. I wish, I want. But if you can't find it, then you got to make it. In Massachusetts, we have this saying, make do or make without. So I couldn't find a job. I couldn't get a job. So then I had to make it. And that's what I did. Busted ass, stayed up really late, made something, put it out into the ethos, and the moment my film got into one of the festivals, an official selection, the phone started ringing. Hey, we love the short. We saw this, we want to know, can you make us a music video in this style? Hey, can you make us something here? Can you do something for us there? Etc. I lived with my parents when I first started too. That's it. I really had nowhere else to go. I started this little studio in the corner of a room. It wasn't just a bedroom. We had moved down to Florida, during the crash because my parents lost everything. And so when they came down to Florida, finding opportunity again, we all had to cram in because I'm the oldest of four. So all four of us and my parents and two dogs We lived in a one-bedroom apartment for a year because we had lost everything. That's it. And I took over the dining room, which is what they called it, and there I had a futon, and I put my desk right next to it. Because right back here, that's where I slept, and I worked, and I did that for an entire year. I had work, it was coming, but nobody was paying their bills on time until afterwards, the money started coming in, I needed help, and I'm like, well, I guess I can't do this from home anymore. And eventually my parents were telling me, it's time to get out. But this is what happens when you have to start all over. And I've started over many times in life as well. So this is some of my artwork back in 1998 when I was in high school. I wanted to be a comic book artist. And so part of the reason why I'm so passionate about the things I do is because of these two. It's a little heavy, a little emotional for me, but I was a troubled youth, and I was on the road to ruin. And I was going to go to a really big brawl at a basketball park. And my friends had told me, hey, come on, we need to get this thing going. And, I grabbed a baseball bat and I was ready to head out to go rumble. And my dad saw me, and then I was going to just put myself in a certain position. And he stopped me, he sat me down on the stoop, and he's like, look, son, I'm going to get one of two phone calls. The first one is going to be from the cops. And they're going to tell me, sorry, Mr. Valdez, but your son has injured somebody really badly, they died, and your son is going to jail for the rest of his life. The second one is that, we're sorry, Mr. Valdez, your son has been in a fight, he's died, and the kid is going to jail for the rest of his life. Which one of those calls do you want me to get? I was 17 at the time. I was angry, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but then my mother, she sat me down and she's like, here's your sketchbook. You haven't opened this in years. Why don't you do something? And so all that anger and rage that I had, because I couldn't go, I was afraid that I was going to lose some friends. And I drew a 500-page comic book over the course of a summer. I locked myself in my room, and that's all I did is work. I didn't have any friends. I had nowhere else to go. But eventually I finished it, and I tried to get it published. And I went to a comic convention one time and brought my stack of manuscripts over and was like, this should be published. And the publisher looked at me, he's like, yeah, I'll take a look at it later. So after the Comic-Con was over, I watched him take my manuscript and throw it in the trash. He didn't even bother looking at it, and I got so angry that I went home, I destroyed everything. I had a waiting to exhale moment where I put everything in the barrel and burnt it. But my dad managed to save some of the work, and those are recent photos too. But I stayed long enough doing what I do, and I've improved myself the whole way. And so when I finally started the studio, I kind of clicked on me that you do have to play by your own rules. Part of the reason I think this is that, for the longest time of my life, I had been listening to other people. Go to school, get a good job, or go to college, get a good job, get married, have kids, get a house. But you're telling this to like a 10-year-old, you're telling this to a 12-year-old, to a teenager who has no fucking clue what this is all about or why you should do it. And you don't understand. I hung out with friends who would always encourage me to do things that were not really to my benefit. I worked at jobs because that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go work for these people. I was supposed to be in this industry. I was supposed to, that's the way it works, right? And then when I finally broke out, I'm just, this is just ridiculous. I've been living a lie the entire time. And starting the studio in Florida, of all places, many people are just like, you're really crazy to do this. Why Florida? What's there in Florida? Well, what we've got now. So just some thoughts about playing by your own rules. And again, you make them up as you go along. These are just some thoughts that I have about it. But what I realize is that nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to rescue you. No one's coming to help you out. You can't make the world a better place until you make yourself a better person. End of story. We think that we can change the world outside of our own abilities, outside of ourselves. But we don't have enough self-awareness to look back and look and say, well, are we put together first? And that's what I realized with my life, is that it wasn't. It was a mess. It was a disaster, and I needed to fix it. So change yourself first. If you want to change anything in this world, start with yourself. The next one is just focus on the few. Because this was the problem, especially in the industry at large, is that they try to focus on everybody. Let's all be included in the conversation. Let's not say anything that's going to offend anyone. Let's not do anything that's going to put people off. Let's not try to rock the boat. But the only end result that you get when you're trying to appease everybody is mediocrity. And when you try to make everybody else happy, the last person you make happy is yourself. So focus on you. Make yourself happy. It doesn't mean be destructive. It doesn't mean, go out and drink yourself to oblivion. But it means taking care of yourself, working on what issues you have, making your life a more comfortable place, not being a blight on society, And then stop making excuses. Why can't you do the things that you want to do? Here's one. And we started vlogging. An animation studio sharing the sauce. Nobody does that. You can go online, you can look up on YouTube. The only thing you're going to get are these manufactured behind the scenes. And to this day, it escapes me the fact that nobody understands how animation works at all. Why? So when we started vlogging, we were like, well, do we need a big camera? Do we need a good rigging equipment? Do we need some good audio? You don't need any of that shit. The only thing you need is some creativity, and I think that's what we all do, and just some determination to do something. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to get out there. You can worry about making it perfect later. So just stop making excuses and do the damn thing. It's the same thing when I do shorts or I work on client work. Sometimes you fall into that perfectionist trap. Just shut the fuck up and get to work. And the other one is just to embrace the fire. So a lot of that, what I mean by that is, there's an internal fear that you have about doing something. You don't know what it is, you don't know why. Maybe you're afraid to talk to this one person for whatever opportunity. Maybe it's to go out on a date. Maybe it's to start a business relationship. Maybe it's to ask for investment money. Maybe it's to make a pitch. Maybe it's just asking someone how the hell they did whatever the fuck they did. Or maybe it's even just telling somebody exactly how you feel. Because I think that's also important too. So if you feel yourself nervous, if you feel yourself feeling anxious, that's the fire within, and you just need to embrace it. And then once you get in there, realize that it's actually kind of fun to be in that area. I mean, I've had to do that quite a bit over the years, especially when it comes to firing people, comes to new business development, new ideas. Like, why not? Why not have a studio that shows you how it's done? Chefs do it all the time. Why can't we? Why can't you show somebody about your design studio? Why can't you show somebody about your sculpture? Why can't you show somebody about what you're working on? Why not? This is the time to do it. The last thing that I really have to say about this, or at least the thought, is keep learning how to play. The sad reality that I have to deliver sometimes when I do college talks is that the creative industry is the most oversaturated market, hands down. There are not enough doctors, there are not enough lawyers, there are not enough construction workers, there's not enough of the things that we need to build society and keep it running. Everybody wants to be a YouTuber, everybody wants to be a graphic designer, everybody wants to be a musician, a singer. Okay, great, that's fine. But if you're going to do it, you got to go through the fire, you got to go through the long haul. It's not just something that you are from 9 to 5. It's something that you are as an individual. Like, I'm an artist, through and through. Not just an animator, I'm an artist. I help people see themselves. I help, have conversations about what this world means. That's what art's supposed to be about. That's what being creative is supposed to be about, is a reflection on who we are. We can tell a society where a society is based on the art that it produces, based on what we have around us. So if all we see is the same shit, where do we stand? You just take a look by looking around. So, and the sad thing that I deliver to these kids is that because of this oversaturation in the market, the career span for many creative people is between 1 to 3 years. And then after that, people fall out and they say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. My studio has been sort of a revolving door for those individuals, and I've watched them come in with a lot of talent and then burn out 6 months later, and then that's that. Or I've watched people in larger studios come in for 1 year, burn out, and go do something else. But if you want to do this, if you want to play the game, you got to stay in for the long haul. And you're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, but you just got to keep on going. And as you go, you continue to learn. In closing, so I'm a big follower of the Stoics. And Lucius Annaeus Seneca had this very profound quote that has sort of changed my life, especially in one of the darkest moments that I've had. And it's that so long as you live, keep learning how to live. I'd like to add, so long as you continue to play, keep learning how to play. So long as you create, keep learning how to create. Thanks.
Esteban, how is your work a fuck you to the industry?
You know, it's surprisingly enough, it's been received very well. I didn't think about, I was really scared when I just started coming, and this isn't anything new. Like I've been an angry son of a bitch for a while in this business. It's the first time I told an executive to go fuck himself was at Nicktoons. It was the show I was directing on, and I came up to him and I said, "There's no leadership in this studio. This entire production is fucked." And he looks at me just really shocked because no one's ever stepped up to him and said the things that he needed to hear. And I was really surprised. I'm like, no one ever tells you this stuff? I mean, you run a business. You have like 300 people in your employ, and nobody's ever told you that this is not going well. So the first time I really told the head honcho of a studio to go fly off a cliff, the first thing he said to me afterwards is thank you. I don't know how that works, but yeah.
So, do you still have that old Cintiq, and how has your work changed in the past 10 years, like just fundamentally?
I still have it. It's at home. It still works wonderfully. But even before that, I have this little 4x6 tablet, and that's what I was doing the initial storyboards on. I'm a big guy, okay? I'm 6'1", and imagine just like hunched over this Cintiq or this little tablet, and yeah, but I graduated, I got that one, it works. My skill set, I think I'm decent. I don't know if I'm really that good. I'd let the work speak for itself. If people like it, okay. If it doesn't, okay. But I try to do the best I can every time I do something new. Yeah.
Hi. So you mentioned self-care, and I would consider you a success in your industry, and I just wanted to ask what your self-care practices look like, because I think they look different for everybody.
Yeah. Fuck it. It's embarrassing, right? Might as well. So I got to a point where I was very suicidal. In 2016, I tried to off myself as the pressure was so heavy. I had about 40 people on employment, and the studio didn't want to pay for the production that we had done. And I was about like $150,000 in debt. And I needed to pay that off in a month. So after a while, I just cracked, and when I got to, I was put in intensive. Well, I was committed for 72. It was that bad, And afterwards, it's like, okay, this is fucked up. This shouldn't be happening. I'm drawing cartoons. I'm making fucking cartoons, right? This is the sad clown syndrome. Shouldn't be happening. And so I just thought, well, get help. You know, you can't do this on your own anymore. You've been trying, you know. I became an alcoholic. I did a lot of drugs. I was a mess. I got help. You know, I still see somebody like once a quarter now, you know, just something to help work things out. But I meditate, I journal, I bike like a motherfucker. So I've done that Pinellas Trail backward and forward. It's the only way to keep the animator gut off. But I mean, the one thing that's definitely helped me the most is falling back in love with my work. Like, that's what I'm good at. That's what I'm really great at. I suck at relationships. I suck at making friends. There's a lot of things I'm really bad at on the personal side, but you get me on a sheet of paper and a pencil and the world just disappears. It's very therapeutic and meditative. The other thing that's been really interesting is just vlogging as well. It's just a thought you put out into the ethos, and then the next thing you know, someone's like, hey, I was actually going through the same thing. You know, it's great to know that this is out there. But, I mean, it's what works for me.
Anybody else?
Right behind you.
Cool.
So you've been around. I was wanting to know why Florida. I know you mentioned you want to do your own thing, but there's so many places you could have been. What brought you here? What made this a good place for your studio?
Very, very candidly, I didn't want to come. I'd never been to Florida.
Yeah.
Ever. The only time I came to Florida was when after the crash, my parents lost everything. I had no more money, and if you drive down 95, you'll see like these scratch marks on the road. So that's my hand just being dragged. But I came here, and I had some opportunities at Warner Brothers, I had some opportunities at Universal, and I was just waiting for the phone to ring. And at the end of it, just like, all right, well, I'm here. What the fuck am I gonna do? Might as well make the most of it. So that's where I started doing the short, and then rock and roll. It's almost like night and day. It happened so quickly. I didn't even anticipate opening the studio. It just kind of happened. It just went. And then the more I worked and dealt with people here locally, the more I came to really love this area. Not just like it and it's okay, but I fucking love St. Pete. Like, this is a great town. I don't think anybody realized that.
Oh, we realize it.
I've been to LA, I've lived in LA, I've worked there, it fucking sucks. I don't care.
We love you, LA chapter, it's fine, we really do.
Don't lie to yourselves. I talk to you. But I've worked in the New York scene too, and it's all right, but there's a big change in our industry right now. It's not the same as it was like 10 years ago. Things are different. And there's more opportunity available to those who want to go after it. So you don't have to feel beholden, because that's the thing. I talk to these folks. I get messages all the time. Dude, I wish I was in Florida. I wish I worked at your studio. I wish this happened. I wish I was here. I wish I wasn't there. Because it's not what everybody says it is. At least here in Florida, I know that when somebody tells me to go piss off, I know exactly where I stand with them. Versus the other one where somebody waves and smiles, and I don't know if they're going to murder me or not.
I feel like there's a tourism headline in there someplace.
Oh. They don't pay me for that, so.
Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you have a wonderful day.